Hi, good afternoon. This is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues bedeviling Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer practical suggestions on building the Nigeria of our collective dreams. Today's episode promises to be exhilarating and riveting. My guest is already here to assist me in unpacking and also give depth and clarity to the topic of our discussions. As always, it's going to be evidence-driven, honest, bold, and a no-holds-barred conversation. So, get ready as we begin in earnest. And now, let's get on with it. Today's topic, we're continuing with what is wrong with Nigeria. This is the part 2 of what we examined in the first episode. Nearly 63 years post-independence, the following represents our scorecard as a nation. Our currency exchanges for about 600 naira to $1. Secondly, our forex earnings are mainly 80% crude oil revenues. Thirdly, our national economy is essentially import dependent. 90 million Nigerians currently live in extreme poverty. About 13.5 million children, Nigerian children, are out of school. And then you have 42.5% youth unemployment, or in practical terms, 21.72 million youths. In actual fact, we spend about $14 billion importing electricity generators and fueling same annually. And in addition, we have 4 refineries that are not working, and this results in colossal loss, economic loss to the nation in fuel imports and all of that. And I mean, to wrap up these depressing statistics, Nigeria's security forces seem to be terribly overwhelmed by rampant insecurity, terrorism, insurgency, ritual killings, banditry, drugs, and all of the armed robbery. Now, since the beginning of this year, January to date, about 3,000 Nigerians have died. These are some of the things we're going to be examining today. You know, like I said, my guest is here, Professor Uche Uwaleke. Thank you for coming, Prof.
Thank you very much, Wale.
You're welcome.
It's indeed my pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So we'll take a short break, and then when we come back, Prof and I will delve into the issues. Welcome back. So my guest is here, Professor Uche Uwaleke. Prof, you're welcome once again.
Thank you.
Professor Uche Uwaleke is a financial economist and a renowned professor of capital markets at the Nasarawa State University, Kefi. If I'm not mistaken, I think you're the first professor of capital markets in Nigeria. I'm correct, right?
By the grace of God.
By the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
He's a chartered banker, stock broker, and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I mean, he has held so many positions at the Securities and Exchange Commission, but notably, he was also a former commissioner for finance at Imo State. So, Prof, you saw the stats, you know, some of the depressing stats.
Litany.
You know, a litany of depressing facts that I reeled out.
Yes.
Are you happy seeing some of these stats? Are you happy as a Nigerian?
Well, thanks once again for inviting me, to your program. And I like the way you captioned your program. The title of your program is a new Nigeria. And it is this new Nigeria that we all seek. Nobody, no patriotic Nigerian will be, happy with the grim, statistics that you've just reeled out. And I think when this administration was, coming in 2015, that it rightly captured all of this into 3 broad challenges.
Exactly.
Talked about economy, another pillar is insecurity, and then corruption. So you could summarize our challenges under these 3
broad categories.
Exactly. But it would appear that these challenges are still with us today, as they were, some years ago. If you look at the economy, for example,
are they just with us, or they've actually gotten worse?
Yes, I will come to that.
Okay.
Part of why the it would appear that these things have been on the increase. If you look at the economy, for example, you take the macro indicators, some of them you've mentioned, then you look at the issue of growth. Even economic growth, has been very tepid, especially over the last 10 years. Okay, even when we seemed to have strong GDP growth rate, before 2014, when we had average GDP growth of 6%, those growth rates were, if you like, jobless growth rates.
Exactly.
Okay, they were not inclusive.
They said growth without development.
Exactly, they were not inclusive, and a situation in which you had economic growth, and on the other hand you're having rising poverty. Of course, will tell you that it wasn't inclusive. Then associated with that is the high unemployment rate. You mentioned it. Youth unemployment in excess of 40%. Unemployment regionally, more than 33%. If we go by the National Bureau of Statistics, then you are also poverty level is rising, and more importantly, the income inequality, as measured by even the Gini coefficient, is also rising. One way to have a fair idea of the income inequality in this country today is to look at the ratio of depositors.
Yeah.
It is said that 10% of depositors account for more than 90% of the deposits. Okay, so that gives you a fair sense of the size of income inequality, which is a problem. Now that's for the economy. Without even going into the issue of, we've mentioned it, insecurity and corruption. So they are very much with us. And I think part of why we have appeared to make little progress in these three areas boil down to, some factors I identify. One is the political factor. Okay, the political substructure is weak. Okay, of course, when you're building the economic structure on top of a weak structure, of course, it's not going to stand. If you take the political structure, for example, look at the federal system of government that we are, currently operating. Quite expensive. The other day, you listened to a very respectable, elder statesman, advocating for
an interim.
Yes, no, it was even saying we should go back to
style of government.
Yeah, style of government, parliamentary system,
parliamentary.
have a president without executive powers, and so on. But for me, what's important in that recommendation, which touches on this political, structure, is moving away from the current bicameral legislature that we have to possibly unicameral legislation. And again, in support of his submission, okay, we should make it on a part-time basis. Okay, members of parliament, those who go to National Assembly should go there on part-time and take sitting allowances. Okay, so that will help to reduce the cost of governance.
Prof,
yes.
Sorry to, I listen to you, and I'm sure like most Nigerians are listening to you right now. In your opinion, as an academic, as a public intellectual, what exactly is wrong with Nigeria? Because I have a number of questions for you, so we need to run. What, in your own opinion, is the fundamental problem with Nigeria?
The political structure is wrong.
How do you mean? The system of government?
Yes.
Or what?
Yes, people talk about restructuring, and they say the restructuring has several definitions. And I was trying to, tell you part of why I think the current structure is unwieldy, unsustainable. Okay, I just gave you an example of having a unicameral structure, for example. The states, the subnationals are weak. You have a center that is very strong. You have subnationals, that are weak. To the extent that a state governor, for example, doesn't have control over the security personnel in his state. That was why one of the state governors, out of frustration, was saying if nothing was done, they would invite
mercenaries.
Exactly. So people have been canvassing for state police And I think I support a situation in which a governor will have control over the governor is chief security officer in a state, in theory. But in practice, he doesn't really have control.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I'm talking about. I talk about structure. Okay, this also dovetails to even the fiscal federalism, the relationship between the center and the subnationals in terms of revenue and and spending. Okay, look at the revenue allocation formula. I'm happy that the RAMFAC has submitted a new revenue
proposal.
Yes, but up till now, what the federal government takes 52% of what comes in, the bulk of the share. So the political structure, in my view, is weak, and that is exacerbated by the also weak economic structure. Look at our economy today. Okay, we say yes, following the rebasing exercise we did in 2014, that now the economy is a lot more diversified, we have more in services. But look at the structure. We're a developing economy. An economy where manufacturing only accounts for 10%, okay, of GDP, okay, is not ideal for a developing economy. Manufacturing should contribute more to GDP because that is where the real job, production, that's where production takes place. Manufacturing. Agriculture is just is 24%. But of course we know that the type of agric we have in this country is agrarian and subsistence. Okay, most of the time, even from the MBS, crop production alone accounts for over 90%.
Exactly.
Okay, and they are mainly agrarian. So even the economic structure is very weak. Nobody thought. I was very, very upbeat and optimistic in 1999 when we had this transition, to a democratic, government. Yes,
this government.
22 years after, I am saddened that up till now we still rely on oil for over 90% of our forex. We have been unable to diversify our export base. So when we talk about the real issues,
this brings me to my next question. Last week, some concerned, even if eminent Nigerians, gathered in Abuja, especially around somewhere in Asokoro here, where we are. And I don't know how they did it. They said that's the center of Nigeria.
Yes.
I'm talking about people like Professor Patu Tomi, Pastor Itua Godalo, and a few others.
Yes.
And they came for a meeting. But apart from the meeting, they also came for something that seemed to be very significant, and it caught my attention. They said they also came to that specific spot, which is, in their own thinking or in their own opinion, is the center geographically of Nigeria. I see. And that they came to pray.
Beautiful.
As it were. So that really got my attention, and I stood up. I was lying down, so I got up in bed. They said so it's like they came to do a deliverance session for Nigeria. In Pentecostal circles, when things are not going well, people say maybe you have spiritual problems, so they need to cast out demons. So let me ask you, Prof, do you have a spiritual problem as Nigeria, as a nation? Do you have a spiritual problem? You know why? Because can you explain to any right thinking, you have friends, like I do, from other parts of the world. Can you explain to any right thinking, colleague of yours in your intellectual circles that we have 4 refineries. The first one was built in the 70s. And not one of them is functioning. We are still grappling with generating or distributing 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts of electricity. So most homes, not talk of businesses, do not have 3 or 4 hours electricity supply in a day. How do you produce? How do you grow an economy? So I ask you, Prof, do we have spiritual problems as a nation?
Well, I would say, on the other hand, on the contrary, I think Nigeria is blessed. We are a blessed nation.
An individual can be blessed and have a spiritual attack, and then it begins to misbehave.
No, I think God has been very kind to Nigeria. Is it weather? Okay. Is it in terms of resources? Even the oil should have been a blessing. Even in terms of human resources, apart from natural resources, we are also blessed. Youthful population.
So what is the problem?
Yes. Chinua Achebe, I'm sure you've read this book, The Trouble with Nigeria. Okay. The summary of Chinua Achebe's book is leadership failure. That's the summary. Leadership failure. Okay. Chinua Achebe identified a number of factors. Okay. Including social factors, value system, and so on. But the summary of that book is leadership failure. So I think we have had, to some extent, we've had leadership failure over time. Because how do you explain it? You've mentioned it. Refineries, 4 refineries, none of them is, functional, and we are importing petroleum products.
And we produce crude oil.
Part of why exchange rate is what it is today.
Exactly.
Is because
we're frittering away.
Exactly. We're importing over 30% of forex earnings is used to import fuel. Look at what we spend by way of subsidy.
Now, that brings me to this point, Prof. Okay, we'll take a short break, Prof, and then I'll come back to you. Well, you're welcome back. Prof, before we went on that short break, you were talking about subsidy.
Yes.
In 2019,
yes,
we spent 350 billion naira on fuel subsidy.
Yes.
2020, 450 billion naira.
Yes.
2021, 1.573 trillion naira on subsidy.
Yes.
But guess what? 2022, it is appropriated. The president just passed an extra appropriation request, 4 trillion. And that's why I said, are you sure we don't have spiritual problems? Because it is only because you know why that becomes an issue. ASU, our youth, we have a youth crisis.
Yes.
Youths have taken to crime.
Yes.
I mean, we can't even sit down here and talk about the crimes,
yes,
all the kinds of criminal tendencies our youths have taken into.
Yes.
Because of idleness, because of lack of opportunities, and they are not in school,
yes,
when they ought to be in school.
Yes.
ASU is only asking for 200 billion naira.
Yes.
Federal government can't give them 200 billion, but federal government can budget 4 trillion, not 400, 4 trillion naira for subsidy that you and I know, like most people also know, it's nothing but a sinkhole.
Cesspool of
corruption.
That's what it is.
So, Prof, in 10 seconds, if you can, yes, are you sure we don't have spiritual problems? I had a prof here, Professor Abiodun Adeni,
yes,
a very good friend of both of us.
Yes.
And he said our major problem is attitudinal. What do you think?
I also think, well, to a large extent, earlier on I had alluded to, value system.
Yes.
Attitudinal, yes. But talking about the subsidy, you also realize that is partly because of our dependence on oil.
Of course.
And that's why if oil price is rising,
of course,
the subsidy we are also budgeting for is also rising. And to make matters worse, nobody can even tell you how much we are even consuming. So that's why we say it's a lot of
and in addition to not knowing, yes, how much we are consuming, even what we are producing.
Yes.
We just heard at the beginning of the year that, yes, almost 70 to 80% of it, yes, is being stolen outrightly,
yes,
unaccounted for.
Unaccounted for. You see, but as a person, I've not been in support of the subsidy. And to be fair to this administration, I think they had the mind of removing the subsidy. Yes. I think December, January, there were talks about
facing it out.
Yes, facing it out. But all of a sudden, they decided to keep it. But I'm told that it will only be for a while until the Dangote refinery comes on. Comes on.
Okay, Prof.
But to summarize, I don't think we have a spiritual problem. It's man-made.
I agree with you.
Our problem is caused by us.
I agree with you.
Yes.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Prof, we've looked at all of this now. What's the way out of this quagmire? In 10-15, what do you think is the way out? Because it's election season now.
Yes.
What's the way out? What do you think?
Yes, a friend of mine said, and I agree with him, that it's not about the farmer, but it's more about the farmland. Okay, so no matter how good the farmer is, if the farmland is not good, okay, the yield from that land will not be there. Good. So it's not about getting a president. Now we are all concerned about getting a president. It is more about fixing the fundamentals, fixing the structure. Okay, so that's why I tend to, even though his views, in my opinion, tend to be radical, have interim government, okay. But some of those views, for me, make a lot of sense. Yeah. So
which one exactly?
Yeah, there are ones we can, easily
low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, low-hanging fruits. We should look into the issue of state police. Okay. Insecurity is a major problem. We should also look into the issue of having a unicameral
legislature.
Okay, we should also look into the issue, which the one is ongoing now, of financially enabling
the states,
the subnationals, to be in a position to handle some of those things. So let us start from these ones, okay?
And I presume you also support ensuring there is a clear demarcation between the states and the local governments.
Of course,
complete autonomy. Because the centers of development, I think, if you agree with
grassroots,
begins at the local
grassroots, yes, and that's why they should have more money, more funds, and of course be in a position to generate, more internally
generated revenues.
Yes, IGR.
Beautiful.
Yes,
beautiful. Now, 2023 elections.
Yes.
What's your opinion? There are so many things being bandied about: zoning, not zoning. What do you think?
I'm going to be biased.
You have a right to be.
Yes, to be fair, to be very, very fair, looking at the history of Nigeria and where we have, the extent we have gone and the extent we have come, and for us to have equity, justice in this country, I think it is the turn. The presidency should be zoned to the southeast. Okay. Yes. Okay. The two political parties should zone their presidency, to the southeast.
Why would you say that?
Yes, I've just
What justification would you give?
Yes, the justification I've just mentioned.
Equity for justice.
Yes, for equity for justice. I think it's only the southeast and the northeast, that have not really
to some extent
had a handle on that. And yes, people say it doesn't really matter who is there, but in our own situation today, okay, if you have a eastern. A president of a southeast Igbo extraction, you can be sure that agitation, for example, these agitations we are having now, will go down.
The only challenge I have with this, Prof, the current president is from Northwest, specifically Katsina.
Yes.
Has his presidency in any way impacted positively on the lives of the people of Katsina? Not talk of Northwest, not talk of Northeast or Nigeria.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Has it impacted positively?
The answer is yes. Go and check some of the federal projects.
I'm sure Nigerians will not agree with you on that. But let's wrap up, Prof. Let's wrap up.
Yes.
I need to ask you this question. Yes. It would be remiss of me not to ask this question as an economist. You know that you are and capital market expert. Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, the car manufacturer, just acquired Twitter for $44 billion.
Yes.
Now, it's unimportant if I add that that $44 billion is way above Nigeria's 2022 federal budget. Anyway, but my question is this. Yes. How do we produce our own Elon Musk in Nigeria?
Yes, it's by...
Quickly, Prof.
Providing enabling environments.
Okay.
The environment has to be enabling. The other day, my friend was telling me that his son immigrated. So I was asking after his son. He said his son immigrated to the US. Okay, an entrepreneur, a very intelligent, he had things he wanted to do, but the environment was not conducive. Not conducive. He had to go.
How do you have enabling environment when our students have been on strike, like we said earlier? Yes. For going to 11 weeks now.
Yes. You're also providing the solution. So a fixed education. Infrastructure, is very key. If you have enabling environment infrastructure, we have the right type of education that is also suited to our needs.
Exactly.
Okay. You can bet me Nigerians are very hardworking. We have hardworking youths. We're already having unicorns, Abi, and these unicorns are run by youths. Businesses with $1 billion dollar valuation. They're already springing up. So once the enabling environment is there, I'm pretty sure we'll have many more Elon Musk and many more Dangotes.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you too.
You're most welcome. Thank you for joining me and for providing your incisive analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wale.
We'll take this short break and then we'll come back for our closing statements. And here are my closing statements. Nigeria in particular, but this also applies to most African countries, urgently requires a political leadership class that is transformational in their approach and attitude to governance issues. While we have had successive governments since 1960, we have, however, had zero or pitiful governance. What is governance? Governance is the output of governments. This is what governments do. Governance is what governments do. I mean, these are shared services performed by the representatives of the people. Education, healthcare, housing, security, law and order, waste management, and the environment, defense, prison, cemetery, etc., etc. Now, look at Nigeria. What is the state of our public education or healthcare services? What about public housing and security? So you see why Nigeria is as it is now. Personally, I believe successive governments, for decades, especially since the 1980s and critically in the last 14 years, have been utterly irresponsible and criminal. Why? Their governance failures and irresponsibility created the Nigeria we see today. A key ingredient, to responsible governance is patriotism. Yes. And this has been embarrassingly deficient in the period I referenced. If successive governments were patriotic, that is, to put Nigeria's interest first above every other interest and considerations in all their dealings, this blessed country will not be as it is today. Yes. It is not an exaggeration if I say that the rest of the civilized world has left us behind. And honestly, I doubt if we can catch up, but at least let's give it a damn good shot by taking steps from now to close the developmental chasm and save ourselves from this debilitating cycle of wars, endemic poverty, and misery. The task and responsibility of accomplishing a new Nigeria is for all of us. Yes, all of us, not them. Since we are masters at buck passing, we all have a sacred duty to build a new Nigeria, where, for instance, all our refineries work optimally, where we distribute sufficient electricity to every home and business premises. Also, a new Nigeria where we educate all our children. This is the barest minimum, and I might add also, anything short of this is failure. It is not going to be easy, for while tens of millions of us will seek to build, a few among us, will seek to destroy, but we cannot allow them to succeed. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. And these are my closing thoughts. I will see you again next week. Thank you, and have a good week. Thank you very much.